Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. This is the voice of Wheeler Kincaid, our technical director here at Theater Tuscaloosa. I should say in full disclosure that due to COVID-related reasons, I have not had a haircut since March. So tonight you will not be seeing my pretty face, but we'll be looking at all the pretty pictures anyway. So before we get started, I just want to shout out to all of our theater friends out there, our actors, our patron friends that we love dearly. We all here at Theater Tuscaloosa miss you. The room misses you. But thank you all for staying in touch. We have some more fun things coming down the pipeline. So continue to check us out on social media. And thanks again for tuning in tonight for Masterclass Monday, where I want to talk to you all tonight about scenic design. And I want to take a pretty cursory look. I don't want this to be 3 hours long, but tonight I really want to focus on, the steps of how we do it here at Theater Tuscaloosa, particularly. So we'll take a look at some shows that maybe you've seen on our stage before. Maybe you're watching tonight and you've been in a show that we'll look at. We're going to examine how we make that stage picture happen when you come to us and see a show and you walk through that theater door and you see a set. Tonight I want to talk about, if I can get my PowerPoint back here, talk about how we do that for you and what goes into the process. So stay tuned, and thanks again for joining us tonight. Okay, so let's dive right in here. The first question we could ask is who is a set designer? What is a set designer? And what do they do? And in a nutshell, a set designer is the person responsible for the overall look of a show. They are the one who works with the director to create the environment for the action. And we want to be able to tell more of the story that perhaps the dialogue itself does not tell. Again, set designers always work in collaboration with the director. When you come see a show, that whole collective vision is all organized and led by our productions director. And you'll hear me toss around the term creative team a lot tonight. And what I mean by that are the designers and the director. A musical director is certainly a member of that team if it is a musical production. And those people are all collaborating together, but it is important to note that usually the process does begin with a set designer. Usually, a lighting designer's job is just by nature a little bit more reactionary, so they'll come into the process later. But what makes a set designer a really important aspect of wearing that hat is being a good communicator. The whole point of a set designer's job is to put what's in my noggin on the stage, and in order for me to do that, I have to be able to communicate that through a design package. And we'll look more closely at what that entails, but also written and verbal communication too, because we all do a lot of talking about our feelings and all that. Set designers come from all over the place. They can be anything. Set designers can be artists, well, they are artists. But they can have backgrounds as visual artists or sculptors, or some designers are producers and directors in their own right. But designers can come from anywhere. The bottom line, though, is that when we are wearing that hat, we are always thinking about those designy things like line, color, and texture. And we'll look at some more of those words from college art class in a second. But a technical background, a technical know-how is absolutely beneficial to the job description of set designer, although it's not mandatory. It is. I will definitely point out to those of you who might not be in the know that it's not something that building the set is not something that the set designer is responsible for doing. That is what scene shops are for and technical direction teams are for. When we're looking at what is the job of a set designer, their job is to draw pretty pictures of what it's supposed to look like, and then come back to help be a part of the process and later stages that we'll look at. But ultimately, set designers are artists, and they are responsible for how the show looks, down to every detail, not how to build it. When we talk about those fancy college art class words, these are not necessarily things that every designer is thinking about tonight when I'm typing up my notes. This is my column where I'm going to concern myself about color notes from tonight and balance notes from tonight. But these are definitely part of the thought process of a set designer. Always in the back of our heads, that's what our concerns are based on, are these things that we'll look at, these elements of design, if you will. And we won't look at all of these, but let's look at a couple. Color is a really powerful design element that set designers can manipulate. I would also say that color, of all of the design elements, when we're creating a stage design, color is probably the one that we collaborate the most on with other members of the design team. Certainly costume designers want to know what the set designer has chosen for a palette, and vice versa. And certainly the LD, the lighting designer, would want to know. Color is a great example of the elements too that it's an artistic concern as well as a technical concern, because color accomplishes things for us artistically. It establishes mood. It can carry a lot of symbolism, we know from studying art history, and that is also true for stage design, that certain colors just mean certain things. Those are artistic concerns. On the technical end, color is extremely important for a set designer because he or she has to be concerned with how that color is going to interact technically on stage with other colors, with the colors of the costumes, and also what colors the lighting designer puts on a set. So if there's any one of the elements that we want to all be on the same page about from the beginning, it's color. And what better example than this picture here that is from, oh my gosh, a decade ago. Just the beautiful, beautiful hand-painted floral portals from Secret Garden that many of you may remember. Each and every one of these flowers, and I wish the picture were better quality, but it's hand-painted by the great Paula Dennis, amazing scenic artist. Great example of color there. Another important element of design we can talk about, set designers definitely manipulate and utilize, is line. I think line is really applicable for stage design. I know personally, I'm always really concerned with the tops of walls and for interior sets and things, how the line of the overall structure, how does that form itself as it moves through space on the stage? It's very interesting to me. And I think a lot of design mistakes can be made just with the tops of your walls, because line is so important. Line can give us a sense of movement. Line can also, especially with stage design, it can provide a sense of false perspective, which can be really powerful. We have a little bit of that going on in this picture here. My mouse should work. There we go. You can see a lot of strong line stuff happening at the upstairs there. And all my friends, all my company friends, oh my gosh, don't fall. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Another element of design we can talk about is shape. Shape is a really important one when we want to establish a sense of realism or abstractness. One of the easiest things we can do to communicate that is to change something's shape, right? To make it more cartoonish, more unrealistic, more playful. This is a picture of a set we did for Sylvia many seasons ago, and we had some funky trees that slid on and off, and other really basic shapes we were playing with, a very sort of graphic, almost cut out of paper feel for that show, where we really played a lot with shape. Texture is also a really important element, and one we'll look at in detail. It probably is one of my favorite. I think it can really do a lot. it's also a great example of where we have to be smart about our budgets and the sets that we can pull off. And I should be able to do this here. So I'm gonna pinch this, or what's the opposite of pinch? Swoosh. I'm gonna swoosh that. And this is a great, just the guys hanging out, having a brewski. This is a show many of you may remember, Second Samuel. Great, cute little show. And here the fellas are hanging out in the bait and brew. And this was a great example of a very heavily textured set. And if you were to walk up to the walls of this set and touch them, you would feel that this is all carved, really heavily carved foam planks. Each one of these planks is individually attached to the wall after it was carved and painted. And so it really gave this rich textural effect to this side of the stage. But again, talking about budget, this is a really expensive effect. It's very powerful visually and does a lot of great things. However, we could not afford to do something like that over an entire set. And we'll actually look at this show more later on, and we'll look at other parts of that set. Here's another great example of texture used in stage design. This is simulated texture or flat texture, painted texture. It is not something you could feel if you walked up to these walls. Some of you may remember this is the castle wall from Once Upon a Mattress. If you were to go touch these set walls, however, they would be flat. This all is painted stonework. None of this is carved. This is some amazing set painting done by Miss Marla Moss, who's absolutely brilliant. And we'll look at some more of her work here too. But this castle, actually, this whole castle set was intended, the set designer, Steve Ray, who also directed this production, did a great job. He originally, the original plan was for all of this to be carved foam texture, and we just couldn't afford it. So that would be an example of, a design wish that, a shop has to go and then crunch the numbers. And that would be something a technical director would have to go back and say, we just can't afford to do that. We can do the texture if we sacrifice some other thing, So in that case, the decision was made to paint it, and Marla did a great job. Another cool example of texture or lack thereof is another little show that I'll swoosh to down here. Many of you may remember Bye Bye Birdie. I just loved the set. It was a great design by Jameson Sanford. Big shout out to Jameson. We love you. We miss you wherever you are in the world. Very talented fella. And this set just reminded me so much of a bowl of Jordan almonds just sitting there, and absolutely no texture to any of the pieces, hardly at all. And with the really brightly painted floor, it was just so fun and clean. And you wanted to go there. You wanted to go to this place, and it was so fun to look at every night too. So this is an example of how texture or no texture can be really impactful in a design. And then I did have to drop in a couple of these fiddler shots. I didn't do a fiddler section, but again, this is another example of some really amazing scenic art by the great Marla Moss. Shout out to Marla. This all of her painting work on Fiddler of the Roof. Let's see. Now there we go. Another look at all of this, and again, a great example of texture, but painted texture. These are all flat. Nothing on that is carved or is in relief, but just absolutely beautiful painting, and a great example of a set designer, a set design team, a production team is only as strong as their scenic artist. And people always ask, is my job as a technical director, don't you hate strikes? Which is where we tear the set down and throw it away usually. And I tell people, no, I really don't. It's kind of part of the process. And but however many years ago when we did this show, I remember crying. This was heartbreaking show to tear down because it was just so well painted. That was hard to do, hard to paint and hard to throw away. Okay. Uh, let's talk about the actual process of design and what are the steps that these design team members go through. How do they communicate their ideas? And we'll look at that more closely. But let's first start with step one, which is reading the play. We all have to read the play. Sometimes the play is brand new to us. Sometimes it's a production that we've worked on before. Um, I think a lot of people would agree with this tactic that the first time you read a play as a set designer, I like to not have any predisposed conceit about what I'm reading or have seen other productions. I want to do it in real time. I don't want it. I want to be able to read this play in less than 3 hours. I want to have a chance to experience it emotionally, just like an audience member would watching it. So I don't want to think about anything at this point, technically, or anything too designy. I just want to read the play. We can read the play more and more, and then really start to collect those details and make a list of those requirements. But something I might, when I'm doing a first read, if I've just been asked to join a project, sometimes there's not even a director hired yet, but you can still get some information out of a production manager. And usually when they hire designers, they will say, hey, we want you to do this project in this space. So it is always great to at least know what theater we're doing this play in before I read it, because that can help, guide your mind. If ever I can find out, is the band going to be on stage? If it's a musical, that helps. And then also, if it's a show that is known for a certain technical challenge or a particularly hard to do moment, are we going to try to do that? Or if we're doing Miss Saigon, God forbid, are we going to even try the helicopter bit? That would be a fair question. Anywho, it's as we read the play a second and third time that we can start to track those requirements. So we can look at, okay, well, what time of day is it? How many locations are there? At each of these locations, what do I need? Do I need a place for somebody to sit down? Do I need a doorway? Do I need a window? Is there a phone on the wall that rings a million times? Those are things that we will start to really take out of the text, because it's all in the text. And it's important to say that all the members of a creative team will continue to go back and reference that text and get clues and inspiration from start to finish throughout the whole process. So the very beginning of the collaboration, after we've hired our team, we've all had a chance to go to our corners and read the play, is the first meeting between the set designer and the director. I will kind of pause and say there's a misconception that all the design teams, the set designer, costumer, and the lighting designer, and sound designer even, would all sit together and talk in the same room with the director and share our feelings, and that doesn't happen. So if you can ever involve those creative minds at the beginning of the process, wonderful. It's very rare. So when we talk about the first meeting, it often is the set designer and the director, and that's it. And we do talk about how the play makes us feel. We talk about what is important to us about the play. I love to ask directors if it's a situation where the director was involved in selecting that production. I always want to know, why did you want to do this play if it was their decision. A lot of directors are hired in and they had no say in the actual season, but and then most importantly, moving forward, we want to know after the first meeting, what is the overall message that we want our production to send? And those are all things that we will hopefully culminate in a well, in the next slide. We'll see when we get there. But what are some things that we do? I mean, to help share what's in our brains, we bring reference materials. I always love it when directors share that. Any piece of visual art, television or film references even can be helpful. You know, probably a lot of college professors would frown on that even today, but I think it's fair. It's a totally fair resource. Pinterest boards have become super popular when designers and directors are communicating for the first time. It can be a great way to collect a lot of information and share it instantly. And, you know, dare I say, other theatrical productions. You know, it's just a fact that so many great theatrical ideas have been borrowed from other shows. It happens all the time, but generally we like to keep our ideas fresh and unique. So I try not to look at other theatrical productions if I can help it. But then at the same time, there are plenty of shows that we've done at the Bean Brown Theater that were absolutely inspired by a Broadway version. So the concept, insert eye roll. This is the word concept can be a loaded term, and it can also be an excuse for a lot of things too. But when you are in the car and you've left the theater and you're in the car and you're in the middle of your car critique, and you do ask yourself, what the hell were they thinking? And we've all done it. Well, hopefully the answer is a lot. Hopefully they were thinking about a lot of things in the design process. And the most important thing to come out of that initial meeting is the concept, right? And what does that mean? It's the overall vision. The concept, if you will, is what is going to affect every single creative decision from that point forward in all of the aspects, whether it's the costumes or the scenery or the lights or the props that we choose. It even affects the choreography and the type of movement that we put on stage. This idea of the concept is very powerful. If you came and saw our production, I actually don't have a picture of this, but a great example of this idea of concept would have been our most recent production before the COVID shutdown of Inherit the Wind, which I know a lot of people were initially, curious, why is this, set in a circus tent, not a courtroom? It was a very conceptual idea that our director, Beth Enzi, and Jameson Sanford, another talented designer, came up with a very conceptual idea that worked quite well. So a lot of times if you see something in a show that's a little confusing, hopefully it was done on purpose and it's part of the concept. This is a slide from another presentation that you can look at or not. And it's just to kind of help you see our structure here at Theater Tuscaloosa. I toss around people's names, but it is important to look at down here at the bottom when I say, oh, I don't know where my mouse keeps going. I apologize. Oh, well. But down here at the very bottom, you can see the creative team listed there. And those are the people that we've already talked about: the sound designer, set designer, lighting designer, choreographer, musical director. These are the people that would be in constant contact about the show itself. We wouldn't be bugging Adam in his office all day about, design decisions. Those communications would be kept to the creative team. Okay, let's look at the design package. And what is that? What is included in that? When we hire designers for our productions, they come from all kinds of places. Sometimes I am the one who gets to design a set. I always enjoy wearing that hat as well. But every designer that we interact with Theater Tuscaloosa is a professional, and they are expected to turn in standard drawings that would be expected at any other professional theater company, and we call that the design package. The first thing we can look at when we talk about design packages is a ground plan. And here's a sort of a fuzzy example of a hand-drawn ground plan. Actually, this is from Rumors from many years ago. Many of you might remember that play. And we're going to look at many more ground plans, so bear with me here. But when we're talking about a ground plan, it in many ways is the heart and soul of a set design. It's kind of the first thing that we're going to set in stone, and that will allow the director to decide on the blocking and the spacing, and allow the actors to get to work in rehearsals while the set is being built elsewhere. Ground plans do change. Oftentimes when we get into the rehearsal hall or on stage, we might decide that, oh, we need a little bit more room to make this comfortable, or we need to move the sofa over here because of some sightline issues that we just hadn't caught yet. It's important to remember that ground plans are drawn to scale. Many of the drawings that we exchange are not. But scale drawings, and we'll look more closely what that means in a minute, but scale drawings just means that we can take measurements from that drawing and correlate them to real life measurements. If for say I printed an email that had a ground plan on it that Ashlyn sent me, and then I blew that up on the copy machine and then gave that to Tina, it wouldn't be a scale drawing at that point because I've blown it up. So a section drawing is another really important part of the drafting package or the design package. And where the ground plan gave us measurements, from left to right, upstage to downstage, the section drawing is what's giving us all of the vertical information. So here we're looking at the side view of the rumor set from many years ago. Do I have my mouse back? No. Now do I have my mouse back? No. Oh, well. Oh, I have my mouse back. Oh, well, I thought I did. Oh, okay. Bear with me. Okay, there we go. I guess I have to smoosh a little bit and then I get my mouse back. Okay. Can I do this? I can. Fantastic. Okay, so now I can wave my hand around. So if you look up here, we're looking at the side view of the entire Bean Brown Theater. We can see the side of the set that's sitting there in space. And we can also see up into the fly house, all this dead space is really important. It's where we put stuff. And here you can see all of the electric pipes, the draperies, the masking curtains, all of those things. They have a specific trim, which is just a fancy word to say height. And it's a location that we record with spike marks, and it's important that all of these things that hang in the air above a set for any production are parked where they need to be, and that's something that we definitely check before a performance. So the section view is giving us all of the vertical information, and the ground plan is giving us the bird's eye view, if you will. And I'm not going to get into too much more detail about how to read these types of drawings. We're going to just continue to look at more elements of the design package. So the model, let's talk about models for a second. And this is pretty fun topic. This is what, okay, I'm going to smoosh. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. But I have my mouse back. Okay, so this is what a stack of dusty model boxes on my kitchen table looks like. And this guy up here, this is actually our theater. That's the Bean Brown Theater, a model box of the Bean Brown Theater. Model boxes are built to scale, just like the drawings we've talked about already. And once we've constructed a model box based on the measurements of the theater itself, sometimes you have to go there and measure the theater. Sometimes you're lucky enough to have an old drawing. But you build a model box, and then you can drop little curtains and things into your model box and take cool pictures of what your design ideas are. And these models are also built to scale. So I told you we'd talk about that again, and we are. So what does that mean when we talk about scale? Go away, Zoom thing. Okay, I don't know if y'all can see that or not, but when we talk about scale, what that means is a way to measure in a smaller format and correlate that to real life measurements. So if we look at 1/4 inch equals 1 foot, we saw that on a drawing, what does that mean? Well, it means that for every 1/4 inch on a ruler, if I'm measuring a ground plan or a model box, every 1/4 inch on a ruler would equate to 1 foot in real life. So if we look down at this bottom right picture here, I've put a coffee cup on stage at the Bean Brown, and if that were a set, if we built a giant coffee cup set, that would be a 16-foot tall coffee cup. That would be a really, really annoying set to have to build. But this helps explain the idea of scale again. Models can be built in 1/2 inch form, which is twice as big as the model you're looking at right now, and we'll look at some bigger ones. But generally, American designers will work in 1/4 inch models. For some shows, models are not used at all, and we'll look at some alternatives. Here are 2 quick examples of some other models. This model here, this is what we would call a full color model. It's been painted. It's has some textures on it that would be reflected in the final product. Sometimes if we don't want to go to the time to create that, models are very time consuming. Sometimes a white card model will suffice. And here's an example of that down here at the bottom. This was a model that was quickly generated with some drafting plates and kind of glued together, but does a very fine job of presenting the shape of a room to a director or even to the cast. If not a model, another communication tool that designers will use are renderings. It's just a fancy name for pretty pictures. Oftentimes a rendering is enough to communicate a concept, so we don't build a model. Renderings can be in color, they can be black and white, they can be done by hand, they can be generated by computer, and I do both. We'll continue looking at some other parts of the package here. Excuse me while I take a sip of my fizzy lifting drink. Here we're looking at another type of drafting that we would find in a drafting package or a design package, and that's what we call elevation drawings. Elevation drawings would be done, pages and pages of these would be done depending on the requirements of a certain set design. But they would be of each of the specific individual elements, each wall, each section of molding, all of these details would be drawn out. And here we have 2 examples. These are old hand plates, hand-drawn plates, and this blue one here, this is the actual blueprint, the ammonia printed blueprint technique. We don't do that anymore. But here you can see there's some texture drawn in. That is an advantage of drawing by hand, is the designers can do that sort of sketchy quality. I don't think I have any of Andy's in this presentation, but those of you who know Andy Fitch know that he is uber talented designer that we get to work with sometimes, and actually was a professor of mine, and Andy is known for his beautiful, beautiful hand drafting. This is not Andy's hand drafting. Here's another example of an elevation drawing. It shows, the overall height of the wall, how wide the walls are. Shows us where the window placements would be and what those dimensions would be overall. You'll notice that none of these drawings show how to build this wall. None of these drawings are engineering drawings, if you will, or what we would call a construction drawing. A technical director is going to get the design package and redraw all of this in their computer, and they're going to turn these images into construction drawings that will then be given to the carpenters. And that style of drawing looks very different than these. These design drafting plates, they're quite pretty, right? I mean, this hand sketchy quality, you would not see that in a shop drawing. That detail is not important in that case. So the point being that design drawings are the ultimate look, not the construction method. So it's telling us the placement of the moldings. We know what kind of window muntins they want. We know which way the door needs to swing. We know that information. It's up to the technical director in the shop to figure out how to build it. Okay, at this point in the show this evening, I would like to just kind of go through a couple of examples of some shows that we've done here at Theater Tuscaloosa and look at those different components of the design package that we've talked about as they pertain to these shows. And the first one, I want to look at, and my gosh, there were so many, you guys. So, and I would encourage you all to check us out on Facebook or our Google Photos page. There's so many great photos of the work that we do that we're all so proud of. So here are a couple. Some of you may remember a production of Driving Miss Daisy several years ago. This is a set design that I did for that show, actually. And here's a rough rendering. We did not do a model for that show. It's too simple, didn't need one. But this just shows the overall platforming arrangement and the general look of the show. The next thing we can look at for that play is the ground plan for Driving Miss Daisy. I know many of you have not ever seen this, and I should be able to zoom here. Okay, so you can see we have the theater itself, these darker lines. Oop, I lost my mouse again. Let's see here. Oh, well, okay, here we go. So these really dark lines here, these are representing these big, thick walls. These are the actual theater walls. And when we're looking at ground plans, a good rule of thumb is that anything that's 3 feet above the floor, we draw in solid line. That's not the best way to say that. The best way to say that is imagine a plane. If we drew an imaginary plane through everything on a stage about 3 feet up, that slicing plane is kind of the viewpoint that we're looking from. Anything below that slicing plane would be drawn with a solid line and would be filled in with hatch or with solid color. Anything above that line would be drawn in a much lighter line weight or in a dotted line even. So we can tell by looking at this drawing that these guys here, this is the actual proscenium opening of the stage. Here's the stage right side and the stage left side, and everything in between is our opening. And you can see the general shape of the platforming system for Driving Miss Daisy. There was a main deck. It tells us here in the ground plan how tall it was. Here was a second level. It had this sort of double curve to it. And then finally, this lower level that really thrust out. You can see beyond the actual edge of the stage. This dark line here is the edge of the stage as it exists architecturally, and you can see that we took the set out further than that. For this play, it was important that we really pushed it forward into your face. So that you could hear, so that you could see, so that you could feel connected. So much of that play, if you remember, is 2 actors sitting on stools, pretending to be in a car. So it beautifully done, but we did it in a very simple way, and that I think really let the actors tell the story. I thought that was a great production, and we can go from ground plan. We saw the original sketch idea. I guess I have to keep unschmooshing. Okay. Now we can see a section view of that same project. We just looked at the aerial view, if you will, of the floor plan. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit here, and you can see. Do I have my mouse? Yay, I do. We can now see how tall the structures are, how high the platforming actually is, and you can see right here where we go. Here's that existing stage edge, and we've projected out beyond that, so you can really see how much in your face that ended up being. At this downstage most actor, they're actually sitting on above what would be the auditorium floor. So this is a side section drawing that was done on a computer. You can tell it looks a little more like it was done on a computer. And then lastly, for this show, we can look at a show pic of all that planning. This was the intent. Very simple. We did a lot. You can see Miss Daisy and Hoke in the car. And then here's another scene from that play, and just totally different storytelling, different time of day, a different feel completely, all accomplished with lighting. And that's Driving Miss Daisy. Another show I want to look at tonight, many of you might have seen actually this year, before we all got sent to the house, was Steel Magnolias, a great little fun night of theater, if you joined us for that. This production was designed by Jameson Sanford. You've heard me drop his name a couple times already. And this is his really, really awesome white model that he built for us. This is a great example of a design project because Jameson was busy working his other job far away. So we did not get Jameson here at all for that project. So all of the design communication was done remotely, which was interesting. And for a show of this scale, that was not a problem. But how cool is that? He's got little pieces of furniture for us to look at. Any information that a director would want to know, or where my doors are, where my counters are, where's the furniture. All of that is spelled out for us in this really cool white model. And at this point in the process, I don't think that this play also, by the way, was directed by Miss Beth Enzi. Shout out to Beth, who did a great job on this play as well. I think maybe at this point in their process, she and Jameson's process, that they hadn't picked any of the colors yet. So that might be one reason why Jameson chose to just do a white model. But as you can see, it does a just wonderful job of getting the point across. And then we can look at a ground plan that Jameson drew as part of his design package for Steel Magnolias. This gives you again, we looked at in the Daisy plan, that same structure that was the proscenium arch. Here's that again on the drawing for this show. And here's our set right in the middle. And you can see the walls of our set. Our doors are drawn in. We know which way they swing. That's all actually really important. There's a lot of planning goes into doors on sets. In fact, did I do the secondary? I did not do the secondary. Whoops. I thought I had included another example of this show. This was a good example of a change that we made. We changed the paint line a little bit for this show, and so we had a revised ground plan, but I will just skip that example. But you can see in floor plan, it looks, exactly like what the model was representing. In fact, if we had his model in our hands and we looked at it from above, this is exactly what we would see. So this ground plan has all the information that we need to start rehearsals, so that Beth Enzi can start, planning all of her blocking, which is where they tell the actors where to stand. And then here finally is a production photo from Steel Magnolias. It ended up just being absolutely darling, and really, really blurple. It was cool though. Really, really cute set. We actually rented a backdrop for that production to kind of float behind the shot, give the illusion of the rest of the neighborhood back there. This is a great example. We're not getting way too detailed tonight about the different styles of scenery, but this would be a great example of a realistic interior. If we're talking about what style of scenery this would be, we have literally, our goal is to recreate a beauty shop. And I think Jameson did a really good job of doing that. Okay. Here's another play that I know I do have two variations of. Some of you may remember 2 Samuel. Samuel was a really fun project directed by Mr. Ray Taylor, who is also one of our Lunts of Tuscaloosa, if you will, one of our actors and a great one. And also lots of our other actor friends in this play. This is an example of a ground plan that changed. Here's the final version, and I'm just going to kind of bounce back and forth, and you can see. This was a challenging set, actually, because if you saw the play, you know that it took place in really 3 different places at the same time. You had a beauty shop over here. Oh God, we've done so many beauty shops this year, or in the last 5 years. Beauty shop over here, the bait and brew, which we looked at earlier, and that picture of textured walls, and then the porch. So we're constantly bouncing back and forth between those locations. And Ray and I had a lot of really detailed conversations about how to plan that. And we tried a couple of different things. And you can see in the final version, the porch has gotten a little wider. We've kind of swung these side areas down a little bit. And then here is, this is actually a computer generated quick rendering I did in Photoshop that kind of gives a quick idea of what we plan to do. And then the final version. This ended up being, I think, a really successful design. It worked really well for a play that is actually really challenging to direct, because you're constantly bouncing back and forth and back and forth. But I think we pulled it off really well. And if you did join us for that one, you remember it was a hoot. What a fun play. Another fun play. This is a play we did, I don't know, 5 years ago, called Regrets Only. So this is a real departure from what we just looked at, real country and plain. This is a very chic New York apartment. This is a really great set designed by Mr. Brad Lee, who did a wonderful job, and directed by, oh my gosh, I can't remember. Oh my gosh. Again, Brad, I've a couple shout outs to him already, I think, but hey, we love you. Hope you're doing well. This is the model that Brad did. What is interesting about this model, and you can't really tell, is that this is a 1/2-inch model. We looked at those earlier and talked about how most designers would opt for a 1/4 inch. The Europeans love their 1/2-inch model, and this is a really big model that he built and mailed to us. I'm sure at great expense. This is another picture of that. You can sort of see the books on Tina's shelf down here, and you can get an idea of how big that model is with a big old giant model box. So cool and so fun to play dollhouse with. But here's the set. Here's the model of the set. He's even given us a couch and some furniture to look at and maybe move around. This is a color model. This is representing not only the shapes and the placement that Brad wants, but also the color and the finishing that he's after. This would be an example of a painted model that we could work from. In this case, the shop painted those walls just by looking at the model, because the model was a 1/2-inch model, and in color. We were able to not require any renderings or any color elevations. And then here's the final product from that show. And I think another really fun set. It's not often that we get to do something really chic like this. I just love these little lighted art nooks, art niches. And you really get a sense of the rest of the apartment, kind of off, unseen. And then also this really neat sort of glass curtain wall effect. Oh, and there's a picture with actors. So again, you can see, and what a difference lighting makes. You can see how those walls look almost totally different colors. But another great example of an interior set that we have done at the school. This is all this is faux wood that was painted. Really cool set. Okay, let's look at a show called Company. Many of you remember this show. We saw a picture of this talking about line. Here's a ground plan for Company. This is also done in the computer. You can see this upper level. We can see that it's drawn in a dotted line. That is a clue that is elevated. Anything in solid line is probably lower to the ground. This is our escape staircases that would not be seen by the audience, but we have to have a way to get the actors up and down. So that's what these stairs are for. And we have one on both sides so that they can come and go. This is a great time to stop and talk about masking for a second. And I'm going to take another sip of my fizzy lifting drink. If we look at these pink squiggly lines, and all of the ground plans that we've looked at tonight have these squiggly lines. And here's a really long squiggly line across the back. And these are curtains. These are black masking curtains. And these short ones are called legs. And these are curtains that fly down and they touch the floor usually. Sometimes they don't. In fact, we can tell by this drawing that this particular leg is drawn with a solid line. So it is touching the floor. These legs, however, in the back are not drawn with solid lines. So they're floating. If we looked at a side section, these would be floating up in the air. But just like we talked about sight lines in the side section view, we have sight lines that we have to honor in the plan as well. So these black squiggly, or these squiggly, not squiggly drapes, these black drapes that are represented by squiggly lines, this masking is what we move around specific to all the set designs on our space, and every set has different requirements, and so those get moved around every production to keep you as the audience member from being able to see backstage. So if we're looking at, now we know what these lines are. If we want to kind of follow the traffic, an actor could, if you follow my arrow over here, an actor could come up the stairs, turn left, and follow this green arrow and come out on the upper platform. And they can go all the way across. They can go off, and you notice that they've tucked up behind this leg. So now an actor standing right here where my arrow is waving would not be seen, and they can go off and down this other staircase. So those are things that we're looking at when we look at ground plans. Here's a quick computer rendering of that same design. You can see that there's that upper level that we just sort of mapped out a path, and you notice that we don't see any of those back stairs. They're totally hidden. Here's a cute little production photo of the gang from Company. This was a fun show in a lot of ways. The band was actually on stage behind this big set. You didn't know that, but that's where they were. And I guess I didn't include a side section for that. But yeah, the legs definitely were floating in the air for that. So that kind of concludes tonight's lecture, I suppose. I haven't even looked at a clock, so I don't know how long I've been talking. But I do want to close with a couple more pictures from a production we did called Ragtime, which, if you were lucky enough to attend, what a doozy, but what a wonderful show. And another thing that we haven't talked about tonight that is important are projections. And as a design tool that is sort of its own thing, most big shows now that you see, they have projection designers on the creative team. So just like you would have a person who designs the set and someone who designs the lighting, you have someone whose sole responsibility is to design content for projections. For this show, we were able to pull off what we would consider a full site projection. And here's an image of that. What we're looking at is actually not a backdrop. This is a white backdrop, what we call a cyclorama, and it is being projected onto by 4 projectors, actually, 2 hanging in the air and 2 on the floor, actually back behind here. This whole platform level that you see is part of the Ragtime set. The only reason it's there and was ever put there is to hide projectors. it ended up making a nice little place for actors to stand as well, but its main function is to hide projectors. And then with computers, a really high-powered computer, actually, it is able to remap those each of the quadrants of output that each of the projectors is doing can be mapped into what hopefully is a seamless image. Just a couple of pictures I wanted to share of that tool that we've used at Theater Tuscaloosa a couple times now at this point. I think Ragtime was the most successful use of that. We did a lot of just different sky and cloud looks, and even we were able to utilize some stylized images of interiors to take us to different places physically. So for those bigger musicals where we have lots and lots of locations that we don't have the money or the time or the space to do with physical scenery, projections is a wonderful tool. And here's another beautiful shot from that show, and you can see the bay and the Statue of Liberty in the back. And this is a cool little sled that slowly pulled across on a track, and it was like a real ship was passing in the night. Oh my gosh. And that is it, you guys. That is all I got. Oh my gosh, I don't even know what time it is. But I just want to say thank you again so much, all of you who tuned in tonight. I hope throughout all of my ramblings, you gleaned something interesting. There's way more to the process that, is also fun to talk about. We just don't have the time tonight. Maybe we can come back another time and talk more about the technical aspects of how we make these things happen, and show you some more pictures and videos of some stage magic that we've done at Theater Tuscaloosa. At any rate, thank you again, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight for Masterclass Monday. Stay in touch, and we'll have some fun stuff for you coming across the interwebs for you soon. Thanks, everyone, and good night.